G'day traders, welcome to a wrap up of Wednesday, October 19th. So I've just got the daily chart up here. You can see the last couple of weeks we're definitely in this uptrend. Okay, just recently we've come to this resistant area where the market's hit its head a couple of times here. So basically the market's not really wanting to head up or down as it hangs around this resistant area here. So tough to have an overall daily view. But you can see if it did decide to head up, there's nothing really holding it up till its next resistant area, which is up here, which is pretty much the highs of the year. Okay, so with that in mind, we started the day's action. So you can see here, here's the open of the cash market. So market popped up and then pushed back down straight away. So the sellers came in, like they have done the last couple of days. Okay, then it bounced between a couple of power points here to start off with. Then it came to this power point here. Okay, so this is basically another area, I guess, where it's the last resistance of the sellers. So once it popped up here, it was kind of evident that maybe the buyers were back, especially with yesterday's close or the gap attracting the buyers up here. There's a real chance that the buyers were definitely going to come in for the morning, which is what they started to do. Okay, the market popped up here, then bounced back here. So it was actually a failed power point down around here. It's a little bit of opportunity for those that like to trade towards the gap to get on there, because it was highly likely that the market was going to head back up here and break through this gap. Okay, once it did break through the gap, it pretty much consolidated along the gap and went sideways for a while there. So that was a little bit of evidence that maybe the buyers aren't as strong as they have been in the past. Okay, so then the market popped back down here. So where this little arrow is here, there's actually a 5-minute sell. Because of how the moving averages were on the chart, it was actually a fade. So this particular one you would have taken as a buy. Looked closely at this one, not a bad setup. Just as I said before, there was no evidence that there was real strong buyers around, and it wasn't under the opinion that it could get back and go for higher highs. So it ended up leaving it. Also at the time, a lot of the other markets were starting to sell quite heavily. Just at this little bit of these red candles here, the Nasdaq and a few others were selling really hard. So even though it did end up working, it was kind of a bit of an iffy one. Okay, and then in the end, the market's come back down to this power point here. So this is one that we actually faded for both trading rooms. Okay, like I said before, there was no evidence that the buyers were around. It's popped down here, and then when it pulls back, it's this second power point, if you believe that the sellers are going to come into play, that you look to fade. So a good opportunity here, but in the end the sellers just didn't come in like we expected, and the buyers came back and just took a bit of control. It's come up here, broken through this green, so another one of these greens that have failed to hold the market up. Okay, and then we've come into a bit of a lunch period here, so the market pretty much went sideways for an hour or so. Oh. So see here the market's pushing sideways, so here would be about the end of lunch, so back into play here. We came up to this power point here, so there was a 5-minute sell. Just here, just above the power point. So it was right at a power fade entry, so a good entry, 5-minute sell. This is one we took for the standard Eminis room and got a good couple of points out of it quite easily. Good signal, this one. Overall, looked like, looking at the 5-minute chart, which I'll bring up soon, it definitely looked like the sellers could come into play. And just before we took this opportunity here, a lot of the other markets started to sell really heavily. So there was quite a bit of evidence that there were sellers around, and that it could actually head down and look for the lows of the cash market, which was down here. So it could actually held this particular one and got 3-4 points out of it. Okay, so down here, this is around about the low of the cash market. The market's then popped back up here, so this is pretty much the power point of the day. So we're looking to trade this one. In the end, didn't quite get there, and we didn't take the trade either because it was right on a news announcement. So maybe the news influenced the market down as well there, so we can't really take a trade when there's news around. But even though this one didn't eventuate, pretty much looked like it was going to be the power point of the day and a great opportunity to definitely get on the sell side. And you see the market's really sold away from there. Okay, so it's pushed down really heavily now. It's broken the cash market lows. Some really aggressive sellers came in here. Popped back up here, and once again another one of these greens failed. I think Dave was saying last night, these particular greens, if you follow the greens, this is about the 5th one in a row that's failed. So maybe opportunity there to look at starting to fade the greens. And then pretty much quite a volatile finish to the market here. You can see then it started to bounce between power points, and at this stage here the contract's got very light on the dome and there's not a lot we could do as far as taking any opportunities. Right, I'll just bring across the 5-minute chart to finish off. So you can see here's the open of the day here. So this is what I mean by fade here. The market's popped back up and come down here. So this is actually a 5-minute sell right at the base of this candle here. But you can see the moving average line is just starting to point up. So it's not pointing up with any power, I guess. But technically this is a fade. But like we said, we left it. Not enough evidence that the buyers were around. Like in the end it did get there. But you can see overall the sellers did come in there and would have been a tough one to take, that's for sure. So one that's probably best to leave alone, especially because a lot of the other markets were selling off really heavily at the time. So not your best opportunity. However, this one here, this is the one we took for the standard trading room. This one worked really well as a sell, and you can see what I mean. As when I was setting up, it just looked like one of those 5-minute sells that you want to take. You can see the low of the cash market here, so that's definitely an attraction for the market to head towards. The sell came after a nice red candle there. Lots of red candles on the other markets as well. I had everything going for it. The entry was right at a power fade as well. So a good trade to take definitely for that one. The only thing that at that particular time I noted that wasn't in its favour was the Dow Jones. It was still sitting up around its highs, sitting up a lot higher. But in saying that, when this particular setup did come, it was selling, along with the other markets selling off pretty hard. So really good chances that the sellers were going to just continue on and push the market down, and hardly a pullback there, and got 2, 3, 4 points out of it really easily. Righto, that's a wrap up of Wednesday.